Good afternoon. Welcome to another NASSP webinar. My name is John Norai, and I'll be your moderator today. Our topic for today is standards, the iron that builds a strong principle. Sounds fascinating. Eager to get into it. But before we do, I'd like to just do a few housekeeping things with you. First of all, for technical assistance, if you need to ask for help during the webinar, you'll call this toll-free number, 855-352-9002, and you'll need the webinar ID number at the bottom of the screen, 447-190-955. I'm going to take a moment and jot those down so you'll have them if a problem comes up during the course of the webinar. We'd like to make sure that you have the background that you need and you know where to go to get tools for later. So I'll get to all of that in just a moment, but I want to start with what I think is probably the most important for most of attendance. At the bottom of this slide, you see nassp.org/webinar completed. That's where you'll go to get that certificate after this is over, if you so desire. If you're tweeting, use hashtag NASSP webinar. And if you follow us on, or if you don't follow us on Facebook, please do, facebook.com/principles. The recording of this, along with the slides, will be available at www.nassp.org/webinar in about 24 to 48 hours. And last but not least in the housekeeping, you are invited to ask questions. We will hold them until the Q&A period at the end of the webinar, but type your questions into the question box on your GoToWebinar panel, and you'll have the opportunity to hear your questions answered as we get through today's broadcast material. And if we don't get to, we'll be happy to try to answer it later via email. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you today's speaker. We're privileged to have with us Dr. Royal from Denver Public Schools, and I'd just like to take a moment to read her brief bio. She's passionate about school leadership, and she believes deeply a successful school leader has on all aspects of educational systems. Over the course of her 18 years serving in education, she's held the role of classroom teacher, staff developer, assistant principal, mentor principal supervisor, leadership consultant, and currently is the director of school leader preparation and development for Denver Public Schools. In her role, she leads programs and initiatives that focus on building the leadership capacity in Denver schools and in order to drive student achievement. Her responsibilities include project director of the Wallace Foundation for both Principal Pipeline Initiative and the Principal Supervisor Initiative, leading the district's initiative to develop and support aspiring school leaders, building a comprehensive approach to onboarding leaders, and leading the district's alternative licensure program for DPS principals and assistant principals. Dr. Royal is particularly passionate about developing effective school leaders that inspire both students and teachers to the highest levels of achievement. And with that, I'd like to turn the program over to Dr. Royal. Are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Happy to be here. Good afternoon to everyone. I'll just get started if you would like to advance the slide. So we'll start with just an overall leader standards. In Denver Public Schools, we started our Principal Pipeline Initiative at the foundational level by defining our expectations for school leaders through the School Leadership Framework. Leader standards are a powerful tool for aligning all components of a principal talent management system. The School Leadership Framework details district-wide shared expectations for school leaders, and it sets the foundation for recruitment, selection, leader preparation, professional learning for school leaders, and performance reviews. The key here is to create a definition of an effective principal in your district. While you will find standards at a national level, like the PISO, which replaced ISLIC, the ISLIC standards, you'll also have state level standards, but I encourage you to create and adopt standards that align to the local context of your district. Identifying really what makes an effective principal in your district and then sharing that definition widely is the key to that strong foundation. Next. So the evaluation system, our evaluation system includes performance review cycles, which define steps through which the principal supervisors assess principal practice, and it also identifies the area of strength and growth. So goals are set collaboratively between evaluator and evaluatee and include both student growth goals as well as, and this is what I think is important, individual leadership goals. Our evaluation system is tightly aligned to our leader standards, and there is full transparency between the evaluator and the leader in terms of what will be assessed and evaluated in the evaluation process. All evaluators participate in training and calibration process to ensure the evaluators are normed. So the key here, I think, is to create a culture where the evaluation system actually becomes a tool for growth and development. Growth and development goals should tightly align to the standards for effectiveness. And by tightly aligning your evaluation system and closely coupling your evaluation and growth and development, you will soon begin to have data that will inform where your district needs to focus their efforts in terms of professional learning. So what I mean by that is by keeping the tight alignment between how school leaders are being assessed will then give you a picture of where, as a district, there, or even in subgroups across the district, where you have gaps and where you have areas of strength. And so that data will actually then begin to inform your professional learning efforts. Next slide. So selective hiring is also a key component of a principal talent management system. Our selective hiring process, which is the gateway in our district into the principal and assistant principal positions, meaning all leaders need to qualify and get into our qualified candidate pool. That pool and that process is tightly aligned to our DPS school leadership framework, our standards, making sure that candidates for the principal and assistant principal positions meet the high standards of the school leadership that are outlined in the framework. So as we've defined it as a district, and we've kind of created this shared understanding of what an effective leader is, then we begin to start to hire for that. So once you've identified those standards for effectiveness in your district, then you'll need to begin to recruit and hire leaders who meet those standards. So the key to selective hiring is to create performance-based assessments that align to your district's standards. So the performance-based assessments should be designed to give the candidate an opportunity to demonstrate their proficiency with each standard. And by doing so, at the end of the assessment or the selection process, you'll actually have a pretty good set of data on each candidate as it relates to their effectiveness to demonstrate the proficiency of the standards that your district has decided are key to being effective in your district. Next slide. So another key component is our pre-service preparation. Our internal principal preparation program, which we refer to as Learn to Lead, is an important and critical element of the overall principal pipeline because it actually supplies the prepared principals to the pipeline. While our partnerships with the universities, we've learned over the course of the time that we've been working on this project, they really do a really good job of preparing quality assistant principals. The sustainability of the principal pipeline is dependent on the further development of assistant principals into the role of principal, meaning they're coming out of our universities prepared to take on the assistant principal role, but there's further development that we've recognized that needs to occur in order to continue their development and prepare them for the principal role. So our Learn to Lead principal preparation program is tightly aligned to our DPS school leadership framework, which ensures that the school leaders are prepared to meet the high standards the school leadership framework has already outlined, and that shared definition of what in DPS makes an effective school leader, our preparation program is preparing for exactly that. So in your district, once you've identified the standards for effectiveness, you may find a challenge recruiting leaders who already meet your district standards. My guess is you'll set some pretty high and broad standards, and you may find yourself in a challenging situation to actually find those leaders. The key is to design the preparation learning experiences, such as residencies, on-the-job training, that really align to the standards that you've already identified, and design content that is includes on-the-job learning opportunities that tightly align to your standards, which will provide aspiring leaders with targeted support that they need to become effective. Next slide. So our preparation programs in Denver, we have the privilege of having an internal alternative licensure program, which has engaged in a successful effort for DPS to become the first and only district in the state of Colorado to have the capacity to provide an alternative principal licensure preparation program and authorize licensure upon completion of that program. So our Denver lead today serves to recruit and attract highly skilled, diverse leaders who are seeking licensure to serve in the roles of assistant principal as well as principal. Our alternative licensure program is tightly aligned to our DPS school leader framework. So again, once you've identified the standards for effectiveness in your district, you may find a challenge finding leaders who meet those standards. The strategy here is to remove any barriers that might prevent a high-quality candidate from applying for your principal positions, such as a lack of licensure. So we have found in our districts that in some of our most challenging schools, such as our turnaround schools, they take on an all-hands-on-deck approach. And when this approach is taken, we find teacher leaders, instructional coaches, and other school-based leaders that are experiencing, just by the mere need of having all hands on deck within that school, they're experiencing on-the-job leadership learning opportunities every day. And as a result, they actually may be our best prospects for succession planning and the development of future turnaround school leaders. And so, unfortunately, in some cases, these leaders may not hold the appropriate licensure and are not in a position to spend a lot of time and a lot more money at traditional universities for the purpose of obtaining a license. And so our alternative principal licensure program is designed to remove that barrier, and it also adds a little more diversity to our qualified candidate pool. Next slide. So once you have identified all of the standards, let me back up a second and introduce our leader tracking system is another key component. The leader tracking system, which is an internal database system used to make human capital decisions, is an important and critical element to all of the overall principal pipeline because it provides data that informs all aspects of the principal pipeline, including recruitment and selection. So our recruitment process, our selection process, the hiring process, growth and development, performance management, all of it is data-driven. And in order for that to happen, we need a unit or a way to capture and collect that data. So our leader tracking system is tightly aligned to the DPS school leadership framework, and it ensures that data is available to inform these human capital decisions. And when I say that it's tightly aligned, I mean it is collecting data on each of the identified standards and the competencies around those standards. And so in your district, once you've identified those standards that make an effective leader in your district, you'll want to begin right away collecting data that will help your district map talent throughout the district. Meaning you'll want to know where is the talent across the district. You'll try to move away from trying to just tap people and who do we know and try to find talent by relationship, but actually use data to kind of paint a picture of where that talent lies. So again, for example, the data from the evaluation system is used to inform it is used to input in the tracking system. The data from the aligned that's aligned to our selective hiring process as well is used to kind of inform the talent throughout the district. And so even if you're an external candidate, as you go through our selection process, we're gathering data on each of the competencies that are outlined in the standards in order to kind of paint a picture of your proficiency towards being an effective leader. In addition to the standards and the competency-based data that we collect, it's also important to kind of collect some demographic data like language and experience and past success with student growth. Most of that data is probably being captured anyway. It's just probably not being captured all in one spot, so that it makes it hard to actually use that data to map your talent. So my suggestion is to collect all of that into one place, and that will paint a picture for each person each aspiring leader, I should say, in the district, and help your decision makers, like your superintendent, make data-driven human capital decisions that are necessary. So at the end of the day, with all of that data being fed into one place, we're actually able to say we have a school opening come up, and we can take a look at that school context and that school community and kind of identify what does this school need in order to move forward, and what's the best leader that will be, in some cases, make a significant change that's needed, or in some cases continue the good work that's being done. And so we map and we try to identify what competencies might be necessary. So if there's a high level, say, of teacher turnover, we want someone who's really strong with culture and really strong with human resources, so that they're able to select promising teachers and keep them there with a strong culture. In other cases, they may have a strong culture, but their next step is to really dig into instructional leadership. So we want a leader who's really strong with instructional leadership. So our leader tracking system, we're able to type in some of that competencies that we're looking for, and it does a search. And it identifies leaders who are actually demonstrating strengths in those areas. In some cases, we need a leader who maybe is bilingual or other demographic identifiers that we can type in and try to help us find a nice pool that we can recommend for those positions. Next slide. And one of our last components that I'll mention today is our mentor certification program, which is our internal school leader mentor preparation program. So we feel like it's important and it's critical. It's a critical element to the overall principal pipeline because it prepares mentors who grow and develop aspiring leaders who eventually will supply the pipeline. In addition to preparation programs, we believe real-time, day-to-day feedback and mentoring yields well-developed leaders which will fill our pipeline. Our mentor certification program is also tightly aligned to our school leadership framework, which ensures mentors are prepared to support and develop high-quality school leaders who are prepared to successfully lead in our schools. So again, once you've identified your standards for effective leaders in your district, it's critical that you also identify and support high-performing principals to be mentors. So leader tracking system can help you identify who those potential mentors might be in your district. Again, by developing a targeted mentor development program, it ensures that your aspiring leaders are learning from the most skilled leaders and will also serve as an opportunity for your district's top-performing school leaders. So one of the challenges that we find in DPS is that we want to have this we've created this culture of continuous learning, and we find that a lot of school leaders who are really high performing at the principal level and not quite wanting to move into principal supervisor role for many reasons. One is there's limited opportunity there, but also some just really love the work of the principal, and they're looking for other opportunities to grow. And our mentor certification program offers that for some of our strongest, highest performing leaders in the district to help them continue their growth and development as well. And with that, I will kind of close out and take any questions that any of the audience members may have. Please feel free to just type those into the chat box.
I have a couple that have come up. The first one is, how long has Denver been engaged in this work?
We began this work with a partnership with the Wallace Foundation in 2011. So we've been at this for a number of years, and our partnership with the Wallace Foundation, we received a grant, and that grant is coming to an end. But as our grant funding has come to an end, we have very proudly been able to sustain almost all of the work that we began with the Wallace Foundation.
Thanks. And the follow-up question to that is about results. Have you been able yet to track any results for kids that you can attribute to this program?
That's a really good question. I can tell you that in December of 2018, we will have a final evaluation that will be able to get to the student achievement level in terms of results. We along the way, in conjunction with the Wallace Foundation, have collected a ton of data that will inform such results and will inform this report. The reason that the effect study and the evaluation has taken such a long time is because we had to get our leaders through the treatment and on the job for at least 2 years. So going through our preparation programs and being on the job in order to track the data between principals who have gone through our treatment, our principal pipeline versus the non-principal pipeline data that we had in order to really calculate that growth. But what I can tell you anecdotally is that what we have seen is when we began this work in 2011, and many of you may find yourselves in this position now, our qualified candidate pool was very shallow, meaning we had a really hard time finding candidates that met our standards, and we had to do a lot of work developing and preparing them to meet our standards. Our situation now, we have a different problem that we're solving for. Our highly qualified candidate pool, which everyone needs to screen into in order to be placed into or a principal or an assistant principal position, they're very, very deep. And so as a result, we have created leaders who are more prepared for the job. So our retention, they're staying on the job a lot longer, which is also resulting in less job openings. So our retention rate is stronger, less job openings, less jobs to fill. And so our pools are very, very deep. And so our biggest challenge right now is how do we take these highly qualified candidates that we've spent a lot of time preparing, and now we have no jobs for them, not a lot of jobs for them. When we started, we had too many jobs, not enough highly qualified candidates, and our position has completely reversed over the years.
That relates to the next question, which was, how do you keep your neighboring districts from stealing your highly qualified candidates?
Yep, that's a tough thing, and we are, as I mentioned, a couple of things are happening. One is that working in DPS, we've got a really strong reputation. One is that we begin preparing our leaders from the teacher leadership level. So we have a specific teacher leadership teacher leadership position that is 50% in the classroom and 50% they're kind of working on their administrative leadership skills and getting support with that. So it makes it attractive to want to be in DPS, and it's a pretty prestigious to be working in DPS. And so that's one thing that keeps our leaders here. But that's not all of our leaders. A lot of our leaders are anxious to become principals, to become assistant principals. They've worked really hard at developing their leadership skills, and so we understand that. And while we do try, we have high-performing assistant principals who may make it into our principal pool, but don't find themselves matched with a job. We call on them to be our mentors for our new assistant principals. So we definitely try to create opportunities for their continued growth, but at the same time, we understand that they need to go to a neighboring district in order to find the role that they're looking for, an assistant principal and principal. And we're very open to that. We're very friendly about that. We welcome them back when and if they decide to come back in and work with DPS. We just feel like they are very well prepared, and if they go to a neighboring district, they're serving kids, and ultimately that's what we're all striving for. So it's a very friendly, because our pools are so deep with highly qualified candidates.
Thank you. How can principal standards inform leadership preparation and external partnerships?
Well, for one of the pieces of data that we collect is where our leaders are prepared. And so we kind of take a look at the universities that are preparing our leaders. And we've identified and partnered with a few here in Denver. I know some of my colleagues across the country have multiple partnerships. In Denver, we have a partnership with the University of Denver and UCD, Denver University. And the partnership is a strong partnership in that the data that we're collecting helps inform their curriculum. So our leaders, what we've established as this is critical to being a successful leader in Denver Public Schools. They've matched their curriculum to that because they want to be able to prepare leaders that can meet our standards. And what they found initially is that with the partnership, one, it draws our leaders to, because they've aligned their curriculum to our standards, it's kind of their enrollment of DPS leaders has increased. But initially, they might have mixed classes of leaders from a variety of districts. But what they have found is that our standards are very high. They're aligned to our state standards. They're aligned to the national standards. And if they've aligned their curriculum to our standards, it pretty much meets the needs of all surrounding districts as well. And so that tight partnership has served as a mutually beneficial partnership.
The next question is, how can principal standards inform talent mapping and succession planning? And tell us a little bit about those terms and what they mean.
Sure. So a talent mapping is just really getting a map or a picture of where the talent is in your district. So as we collect data on whether it be evaluation data or whether it be through our selective hiring process, we're gathering data, information like numeric information that we feed into a system, and that kind of paints the picture of where our strengths are in a district. Like if we put a lot of emphasis on instructional leadership, we'll see that maybe we're doing pretty well in instructional leadership, but there's high turnover with teachers, and we need to do some more work around culture, or as I mentioned earlier, maybe even how we're recruiting, selecting, and retaining our teachers. And so That will inform us to do a lot more, a lot of work around that in terms of professional learning for leaders who are on the job and support. But the leader track, and then the flip side to that is, say we have an opening that we need to fill. Well, then we will look to see where our talent lies and where we can, in some cases, either make a shift or look in our talent pools to say who's really surfacing with some strengths that match the school opening that's needed.
Thank you. How can principal standards inform recruitment and selection of school leaders?
So, again, if we can take a look at the talent that we do have and identify that maybe there's some gaps in the talent or competencies that being less represented as strengths, then it allows us to actually target our recruitment of school leaders to meet the needs that we have. So an example of that is we're definitely not enough leaders of color in our talent pool, definitely not enough bilingual and Spanish-speaking leaders. So that allows us to, one, develop a partnership that is specific around second language learners and to recruit and develop leaders who are highly skilled and proficient at leading schools that are dominant in second language learning, as well as maybe go specifically to recruit for the language skills that we need. And so the leader standards, by being able to map out where the talent is, it helps us be more targeted with our recruitment.
Well, thank you. And the last question that I have recorded in front of me, and unless anybody adds another one, is how can principal standards inform performance reviews and professional growth?
I think the biggest thing here is that it allows for that the transparency around what actually is being assessed and evaluated. So there's no gotcha, there's no hidden agenda, there's no kind of gotcha feel. We're able to say we all collectively believe and agree that an effective leader in DPS meets this criteria, meets these standards. And so we're going to assess for that. And over time, we found that as we assess for that and support that and develop towards those standards, then over time we find that our leaders are actually meeting the standards, and our context changes a little bit, and we need to make some updates and upgrades and keep pushing the mark. And so we keep our leader standards fresh and relevant for our leaders, and which actually really allows the growth and development and the continuous learning to be an ongoing kind of learning cycle process. And so I think what the key there is to just, keep everything relevant and to ensure that your leader standards, the process is an iterative process, and that they are consistently being used, and that they consistently inform all of the components that we've discussed today.
Well, thank you again. Really appreciate your being with us today and taking the time to present. I'd like to remind our members of our audience that you can pick up your certificate of attendance for this webinar at nassp.org/webinar completed. And with that, I'd like to invite you to join us at the NASSP National Principals Conference, July 11th through 13th in Chicago at the McCormick Place. Look forward to seeing you there. Thank you again for being with us.